Let's be brutally honest, some survival products are straight up garbage when the pressure's on. Not just useless, dangerous. They might look cool on a YouTube short, they might be packed into some flashy bug-out bundle, but when the grid's down, food's gone, and panic is everywhere, these things won't save you. They'll slow you down. Or worse, give you false confidence right before everything falls apart. This is the stuff people throw into their emergency kits without thinking. Things they saw in a viral ad or on some influencer's gear table. But real-world survival isn't about having 15 features in one gadget. It's about having one thing that works every single time. Now here's the hard part. A lot of these items are sitting in people's bags right now, maybe even yours, and that's exactly why this matters. Because when the shelves are empty and the lights go out, you don't get a second shot. The time to fix your kit is before the storm hits, not during. This isn't fear-mongering, it's course correction. If your survival plan is built on junk, you're not prepping, you're pretending. So let's break down what not to trust when it all goes wrong. Hit subscribe if you're done with survival fluff and ready for gear that actually delivers. No hype, no filters, just facts. Number 1, hand sanitizer as first aid. Hand sanitizer feels like one of those smart survival picks. It's small, cheap, and everywhere. Most people toss a few bottles into their bug-out bag thinking, hey, it'll disinfect cuts if I need it. But here's the problem. Hand sanitizer is not first aid, and depending on it in a real emergency, that's a massive mistake. Let's break it down. Hand sanitizer is designed for skin contact only to kill germs on your hands. It contains ethyl or isopropyl alcohol, usually around 60–70%, which might kill some bacteria. But when you apply it to an open wound, it doesn't clean the injury, it just burns like hell. Worse, it dries out tissue, increases irritation, and in some cases makes things worse by locking in dirt if the wound wasn't flushed first. And let's be honest, in a crisis, you're not working with clean hospital tools. You're dealing with dirty surfaces, scraped knees, possible infections, and zero access to doctors. That tiny bottle of Purell, it's not going to save you. It'll just give you a false sense of control. As of June 2025, first aid professionals still emphasize, hand sanitizer is for hands, not wounds. For real emergencies, you need clean water, antiseptic wipes, iodine swabs, or basic saline solution to flush out dirt and bacteria. Follow that with antibiotic ointment and sterile gauze. Simple, cheap, and 100x more effective. Here's what to do instead. Keep hand sanitizer for cleaning your hands, not cuts. Add actual wound cleaning items to your kit like betadine wipes or alcohol pads. Learn basic wound care. You don't need to be a medic. Just know the basics. Because when things get rough, you don't rise to the level of your intentions, you fall to the level of your preparation. And if you're banking on sanitizer to handle injuries, you're not prepping, you're pretending. Number 2, instant oatmeal packets. Instant oatmeal feels like a solid survival food, right? It's cheap, lightweight, easy to store, and packs some calories. That's why it ends up in so many bug-out bags and emergency food bins. But here's the truth, when a real crisis hits, those oatmeal packets, they're close to useless unless everything else is working perfectly. Let's start with what nobody mentions. Instant oats need clean water and not just a little. You'll need at least half a cup per packet, sometimes more. And that's assuming you have water to spare, which in many survival scenarios you won't. Whether you're stuck in an urban blackout, dealing with contaminated sources, or rationing what little you have, wasting precious water on oatmeal is a bad trade. Now let's add fuel. You can't eat them cold, not without serious regret. They taste like paste, and your body won't process the carbs properly unless it's hot. That means you need a clean heat source, fuel, and cooking gear just to make a 150-calorie packet of sugar and oats. Speaking of calories, most instant oatmeal packets are filled with added sugar and barely 4 grams of protein. In a real crisis, that's not enough to keep you going, especially if you're moving, hauling gear, or exposed to the elements. You'll be hungry again in an hour, guaranteed. Better options? Look for ready-to-eat foods like protein bars, vacuum-sealed rice and lentils, or shelf-stable meals that actually provide fat, protein, and slow carbs, the stuff your body needs under stress. Here's the move. Don't rely on any food that requires boiling water. Use oatmeal as a backup, not a base. Always carry high-calorie, high-nutrition foods that don't need prep. Because when your fuel's gone, your water's running low, and the weather's closing in, you won't care about breakfast. You'll care about survival, and those cute little packets won't cut it. Number 3. Scented candles. Scented candles might sound cozy and even multi-use when prepping for power outages. They're already in most homes, they provide light, and they can even mask unpleasant smells. But when a real crisis hits, these little glass jars of wax will be one of the first things you'll regret depending on. Here's why. First off, the light output is weak. One scented candle barely lights a few feet around it, making it useless for real illumination. You might think you can light a few and brighten a room, but even 5 won't match a single LED flashlight, and the heat they generate adds up fast. In hot environments or cramped rooms, it becomes uncomfortable or even dangerous. Second, scented candles burn unevenly and much faster than emergency candles. Most burn for 4-6 hours tops, and if the wax is soft or decorative, you're lucky to get even that. Compare that to emergency candles that burn clean, unscented, and can last up to 100 hours. Then there's the safety risk. Scented candles are usually stored in decorative glass jars, not designed for rough handling, uneven surfaces, or emergency conditions. Tip one over in a blackout, and now you're dealing with a fire hazard in the middle of a disaster. And we haven't even touched on the scent itself. In a closed space, especially with limited airflow, heavy fragrances can actually cause headaches, nausea, or irritate the lungs, especially for children or people with asthma. The last thing you need when sheltering indoors is to make breathing more uncomfortable. Real survival lighting needs to be bright, long-lasting, portable, and safe. You need lanterns, headlamps, solar-powered LED lights, and real emergency candles, not leftover bath decor. If you want to use scented candles as a backup, fine, but don't pack them in your bug-out bag, and definitely don't treat them like a serious light source. When the grid is down and the clock is ticking, you need tools that deliver, not ambiance. Because surviving in the dark isn't about mood, it's about function. And function is the one thing scented candles consistently fail to provide. Number 4. Cheap gas station lighters. There's a reason almost every survival kit includes a way to start a fire. It's one of the most essential tools in any emergency. But too many people make one crucial mistake. They toss a few cheap gas station lighters into their bag and assume they've got fire handled. In reality, those plastic throwaway lighters are one of the least reliable tools you can pack when it actually counts. Here's the deal. Disposable lighters are mass-produced with thin, flimsy plastic. Drop one on a rock or step on it once, and it can crack, leak, or break entirely. Even if it looks fine, that one tiny flint wheel has to work perfectly or the whole thing's useless. Add some dirt, moisture, or cold weather, and you've got a fire starter that fails more often than it works. Then there's the fuel. Cheap lighters lose gas even when they're not being used. Leave one in a hot car or a humid environment, and you might pick it up a month later and find it completely empty. And during a crisis, there's no walking down to the corner store for a refill. Worse, these lighters often fail when you need them most in wind, rain, or cold. The flame is weak, easily blown out, and hard to keep going if your hands are shaking or your fingers are numb. Some models don't even light unless you hold them at just the right angle, which is useless when you're trying to light a stove, a fire pit, or emergency candles. A proper survival lighter needs to be windproof, refillable, and rugged enough to take a beating. Brands like Bic are more reliable than dollar store lighters, but even then, they're only good as a backup. Your primary fire-starting tools should be a combination of a ferro rod, waterproof matches, and a windproof butane lighter built for outdoor use. Don't trust your survival to the same lighter they sell next to the gum at the checkout line. Because when it's dark, cold, and you need fire to cook, stay warm, or signal for help, that cheap plastic spark toy won't cut it. It'll fail, and you'll feel it. Number 5. Plastic rain ponchos. Plastic rain ponchos are one of those survival items that seem smart until you actually have to use them. They're cheap, lightweight, and easy to fold into any emergency bag, which is why they end up everywhere from gas stations to disaster kits. But when the skies open up and you're dealing with real weather, not just a summer drizzle, these flimsy plastic sheets show exactly why they don't belong in serious gear. First, the material is incredibly thin. One tug, one snag on a tree branch, or even one rough movement and you're left with a giant rip down the side. Now you're not just wet, you're soaked, and your so-called rain gear is flapping uselessly in the wind. In cold or windy conditions, that can lead to hypothermia fast. Second, they don't breathe. Plastic traps heat and moisture, turning the inside of the poncho into a sauna. You end up drenched anyway, just from your own sweat. That's not just uncomfortable in a real crisis, it's dangerous. Wet clothes mean heat loss, and in survival conditions, staying dry is everything. Third, cheap ponchos often come with useless hoods, weak seams, and zero ability to secure them properly. They blow around in high wind, stick to your skin, and don't offer any real protection beyond a light sprinkle. Add in the fact that they're usually single-use, despite the claims on the packaging, and you've basically packed a disposable garbage bag with armholes. A proper rain layer should be durable, reusable, and designed for movement. Look for ponchos made from ripstop nylon or coated polyester materials that can actually withstand pressure, rain, and wear. Even better, a proper waterproof jacket with sealed seams and ventilation will outperform any poncho in both protection and comfort. If you're prepping for real-world scenarios, don't rely on dollar store plastic to keep you dry. Because when the rain doesn't stop, the temperature drops, and your shelter's still an hour away, that trash bag won't save you. It'll turn your bug out into a breakdown. And once you're cold and wet, survival gets a whole lot harder. Number 6. Store-bought trail mix bags. Trail mix gets tossed into almost every bug-out bag and emergency stash because it feels like the perfect survival snack. No cooking, long shelf life, and loaded with calories. But once the crisis actually hits and you're relying on what you packed, those colorful trail mix bags from the grocery store turn out to be one of the most overrated food items you could have brought. Let's start with the basics. Most store-bought trail mix is high in sugar and low in actual fuel. Those yogurt-covered raisins, chocolate bits, and candied fruits aren't survival food. They're candy disguised as nutrition. Sure, you'll get a quick energy spike, but you'll crash fast. The nuts are what matter, but in most mixes, they're outnumbered by sugary fillers. Then there's the issue of protein. A typical serving has maybe 4 to 6 grams of it, barely enough to keep your muscles going if you're hiking, hauling gear, or just stressed out and burning more calories than usual. Add to that the fact that many mixes are salted, which increases thirst, and you're actually making hydration harder at a time when water might already be limited. Shelf life is another trap. Those convenient resealable bags may claim they last a year or more, but the oils in the nuts and seeds go rancid fast, especially if they're stored in warm or fluctuating temperatures. Open a bag 3 months into storage and you might get stale, bitter-tasting chunks that are barely edible, let alone satisfying. And don't forget how noisy the packaging is. Try opening one of those foil bags quietly in the dark without drawing attention. Good luck with that. What you want in a survival situation is compact, calorie-dense, slow-burning food that doesn't mess with your energy levels or hydration. Look for vacuum-sealed nut packs with no sugar added, or make your own mix with unsalted almonds, sunflower seeds, dried meat strips, and a touch of dried fruit for balance. Trail mix shouldn't be candy in disguise. It should keep you going when everything else stops. If your snack burns out before you do, you packed the wrong food. Number 7. Emergency whistles built into backpacks. A lot of modern backpacks and bug-out bags come with built-in emergency whistles, usually molded into the chest strap buckle or stitched into the zipper pull. On paper, it sounds brilliant. One less thing to carry, always within reach, no extra cost. But in a real crisis, these whistles often prove to be completely worthless, and relying on one could be a dangerous mistake. First, let's talk about volume. A proper emergency whistle should be loud enough to cut through wind, rain, forest noise, or urban chaos. We're talking 100 decibels or more, enough to grab attention over a serious distance. But most of these built-in versions barely hit half that. They sound more like a plastic toy than a true distress signal. In a survival situation, that's the difference between being found and staying lost. Then there's the issue of design. These whistles are usually made of soft plastic, with small holes and uneven air channels. You blow as hard as you can, and all you get is a weak, inconsistent squeak. If you're injured, cold, or short on breath, they become even harder to use effectively. And if the whistle is part of a chest buckle, forget about using it while moving, laying down, or if your gear shifts out of place. You might not even remember it's there. And that's another problem. Most people forget the whistle exists altogether. It blends into the strap, looks like any other piece of plastic, and unless you've practiced using it, you probably won't think to grab it when panic sets in. A proper whistle should be standalone, high decibel, and easy to find in the dark. Brands like Fox 40 or Storm make whistles that are lightweight, weatherproof, and loud enough to be heard over serious noise. Attach it to the outside of your bag or wear it on a lanyard somewhere visible, accessible, and ready. Built-in whistles might tick the box for marketing, but when it comes to real survival, you need tools that work, not features that were slapped on as an afterthought. If no one can hear you when it matters most, you didn't bring a safety tool, you brought a false sense of hope. Number 8. Phone power banks. No solar backup. Phone power banks have become a go-to item in nearly every bug-out bag, emergency drawer, or glove box. And on the surface, it makes perfect sense. You want to keep your phone alive not just for calls, but for maps, flashlights, notes, or even digital documents. But here's where things fall apart. Most people are packing power banks that, in a real crisis, will be dead weight within days or even hours. The biggest issue is energy limitation. Most standard power banks, the ones you buy for under $20, give you 1, maybe 2 full charges. That's it. If you're stuck without power for 3 days or more, that shiny little battery brick becomes nothing more than an expensive paperweight. And if your phone's already half drained when the lights go out, that 2 charges claim quickly becomes 1.5 if you're lucky. Then there's shelf life. Power banks slowly lose charge even while sitting unused. Pick one up that you charged 3 months ago and it might already be half empty or completely dead. Some cheap models don't even hold a charge longer than a few weeks unless topped off regularly, which defeats the purpose of emergency storage. Now, factor in the lack of solar input. Once your bank is dead, it's game over unless you have a secondary way to recharge it, and most people don't. They forget to pack a solar panel or crank charger, and they assume that a single battery will carry them through. But real-world emergencies aren't a couple hours of darkness, they can stretch into days. And without power, your phone becomes a black screen and your bank becomes junk. The smarter move is to upgrade your setup. Look for solar-compatible power banks with built-in panels or a detachable solar array. Yes, they charge slower, but they give you infinite recovery as long as you have sunlight. Better yet, pair your bank with a multi-output solar charger so you can power flashlights, radios, or even batteries, not just your phone. Don't bet your survival on a single-use battery with no backup plan, because once it's drained, so is your access to communication, navigation, and information. And that's a luxury you can't afford to lose when the grid's gone. Number 9. Cheap reusable straws with filters. At first glance, filtered straws seem like a genius prep item. Lightweight, compact, and designed to let you drink from lakes, streams, or puddles in an emergency. And when survival gear exploded in popularity, these straws became one of the most promoted tools on social media. But here's the catch: most of the cheap, off-brand filtered straws flooding the market right now aren't just ineffective, they're dangerous. The idea is solid. Drink directly from a water source while the built-in filter removes bacteria and debris. But execution? That's where most of these straws fall apart. Literally. First, let's talk about durability. Cheap straws are made from thin plastic tubing and low-grade filter membranes. Bite down too hard, apply pressure at the wrong angle, or use it more than a few times, and the internal structure can crack or collapse. Once that happens, you're not just sucking dirty water, you're trusting a broken, unverified filtration system. That's a major health risk. Then there's the flow rate. Anyone who's actually used one of these knows they're hard to draw water through. When you're dehydrated, tired, or in an emergency, you don't want to be fighting suction just to get a sip. And if the filter clogs, which happens fast in muddy or silty water, you're done. There's no backup plan built into most of these straws. They're single-stage, non-replaceable, and non-cleanable. You get what you get, and once it's blocked or compromised, that's it. And don't assume all filters are the same. Quality survival straws like the Sawyer Mini or Life Straw go through actual testing and block 99.9% of bacteria and protozoa. The knockoffs? No certifications, no lab results, just marketing claims. Some don't even specify what their filters remove. That's not gear, that's wishful thinking. If hydration is critical, and it always is, your water plan needs to be rock solid. Carry a real filter, not just a gimmick straw. Have water purification tablets, a backup filter bottle, or a gravity-fed system for larger groups. Because once you're out in the field, thirsty, and staring at a sketchy water source, you don't want your only tool to be a straw that fails under pressure. That's not survival, that's surrender. There's a big difference between looking prepared and actually being prepared. And when a real crisis hits, that difference shows fast. The gear people proudly display in peace often turns into dead weight when it's time to move, survive, or make real decisions under pressure. Every item we covered today might seem harmless, even helpful, until you need it to work. And that's when the truth comes out. Weak lights, fake filters, candy disguised as food, these aren't just poor choices, they're liabilities. The real threat isn't always the crisis. Sometimes it's the false confidence you pack in your bag thinking you're ready. The solution? Audit your kit. Be honest. Replace hype with function. Focus on gear that's proven, tested, and built for reality, not marketing. Because once you're cold, wet, tired, and on your own, flashy gear won't save you. Smart choices will. If this helped you spot any weak links in your setup, hit that like button. And if you're serious about ditching the fluff and prepping for what actually happens, not what sounds cool, hit subscribe. We don't sell fear, we break down facts every single week. Stay sharp